Hey everyone, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, getostrich.com, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. And on today's episode, I have a great conversation with Fabian Schwartz, who is the managing partner of Scrum Colombia. He has just written a book that is going to be released on March 15th. It's poker, not chess. And it's all about Scrum and how to implement Scrum in your business. So if you're not familiar with Scrum, Scrum is a management framework that allows you to tackle projects that have high uncertainty and have a way for you to execute on those quickly and effectively. So typically it's been used in technology, and Fabian talks about how that transformation has moved into other sectors and some of the great results that he's had. So a very informative and great conversation. Fabian is originally from Germany, lived in Australia for a number of years, and now resides in Colombia. So a lot of interesting perspective that he's seen over his journey and career, and fun conversation. So I hope that you enjoy today's episode with Fabian Schwartz.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying I'll never leave this place. Some words got you searching for the bright side over and over until you're looking on the inside. Yeah. One life, there's a feeling that you can't find. Holding a hope and only keep you on the outside.
All right, Fabian, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on and hear about your new book. It's Poker, Not Chess, and understand a little bit more about your journey and starting Scrum Colombia and your experience within the IT sector and how you've developed this methodology and worked with this methodology, Scrum, and understand a little bit more about your story. So welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast.
Yeah, hey William, thanks for having me. Just mentioning, I did not develop Scrum myself.
Yeah, sorry.
But, worked very closely with Jeff Sutherland, the person that actually did that. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. And thanks for that that correction, slip of the tongue there. So tell me a little bit about who you are, Fabian. The audience is probably not familiar with you and your work, but would love to hear a little bit about your journey, because you've been in the IT sector and project management for a while. And it sounds like you weren't always doing Scrum. So I want to understand that process and learn a little bit more about who you are and your journey.
Yeah, sure. So I work more or less 20 years now in telecom, in the IT sector. I started pretty much from the beginning working in projects, and they were initially small and then they became bigger. And we use then methods that we call now traditional project management, where you basically try to plan everything up front. Then you develop a massive Gantt chart, and then you try to fulfill the plan. But basically from day one, your plan is doomed to fail. So I did that for a while, and in terms of career, it was more or less successful. I even became the head of a PMO, project management office in one company. And then around 2007, a startup approached me if I can help them to manage their startup, basically.
Yeah.
Offering me shares if they would be successful. And I did, but I did the way I saw projects should work or are working. So we're working a year or so on that project, producing basically only paper but no code. And then they got a little bit upset with me. So we had a discussion, and I didn't understand what's their problem. They didn't understand mine. And someone in the group said, well, I've heard about Scrum at the university, so why don't we just use Scrum? I said, well, do what you want. So we did that. I have to say it was not really good Scrum. It was like our our Franken Scrum, if you want. But it was successful. We took 3 months to finish the whole project. And I guess I should have looked more into Scrum at that point in time, but I did not. So I was basically rejecting it, saying, well, it's pure luck. And that went on for a couple of years afterwards. So I had traditional projects, Scrum projects. The Scrum project usually went better, but I always rejected them. Until we had a really big one in Latin America, was basically replacing all the the software of a big telecom company. We had a year of in time and $70 million budget. So it was for software big.
Yeah.
Everything was traditional. So the day we were supposed to deliver, 0% of our test cases worked.
Yikes.
So we had a huge problem. The first problem actually was that they didn't pay us, which is kind of logical because we didn't deliver, but it was a big problem because our cash flow was affected. We had to let go half the people. And then we had an emergency meeting and we were sitting there, okay, what are we going to do now? And we said, okay, let's try Scrum. Like we can't make it any worse, so let's try Scrum. We did that. This time we did it in a good way. So we trained everyone. We tried to follow the rules, and it worked. In 4 months, with half the people, we went from 0 to 100. And that's when I said, okay, yeah, well, something is it about this Scrum that continuously creates these kind of results.
That's awesome. So yeah, it sounds like you had firsthand experience of what didn't work, and having a kind of hybrid Scrum that you called Scrum, and then actually figuring out how to make it work. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's true. Today I would say the first version of our Scrum was not really good Scrum, and we still were lucky that it worked. Today I would probably suggest when you start, you should follow the rules before you adjust anything.
Sure.
But yeah, that was at that time.
Perfect. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So at that point, is that what led you to start Scrum Colombia, or when did you begin that organization and the programs that you've created around Scrum?
Yeah. And so I'm native German, and from Germany I moved to Australia, and from Australia to Colombia in 2011. And in 2014, founded Scrum Colombia. And we started basically training people in Scrum here, and coaching, consulting people in Scrum. And at the beginning, it was interesting because nobody here knew, or few people knew what is Scrum. So the first challenge was to convince them that it's something useful they would need. So, for example, in our first training, we had 8 people, and I think half of them were free, so free seats. So yeah, it was around 2014.
Okay. And what was that process like to build up the business and get it to where it is today?
It was very interesting. So what certainly helps us a lot is that major companies are now in digital transformation. And that's kind of a driver for Agile transformation or Scrum transformations. So that kind of created a huge demand in the market. And we don't have a lot of competition. We were one of very few that offer really good Scrum and can show real results, and like 200, 300, 400% performance improvements and results. So it was very interesting. In the beginning, we had no demand, and we had to convince them that they should try Scrum. And now it's the opposite. Now we can't fulfill demand. And yeah, it was an interesting journey. Yeah,
that's a good problem to have when you've got more demand than you do the ability to fulfill it.
Yeah, it's a nice problem.
Exactly, very nice problem. So I think it would be good to pause here. Can you explain a little bit about what Scrum is to the audience? Because I'm fairly certain that not everyone knows the term Scrum and how it's applicable and what exactly Scrum is.
Okay. So if I should explain that, I would say Scrum is probably a lightweight management framework that helps you to improve your performance, but an incredible level. And it also helps you to adjust way faster to your changing environment.
Okay, perfect. So what are some examples of, if folks are thinking about where they could potentially use Scrum, what are some instances where would you recommend implementing this specific framework?
Okay, so I would say in every environment where your uncertainty is high. So, for example, if you have an accounting process, well, the uncertainty is probably not very high, so you just follow your process. But if you develop a new project, a new service, a project, sure, you usually have high uncertainty, and Scrum is perfect for that. And we have done a lot of Scrum in technology, which is kind of like the natural ground for Scrum. But we now do Scrum everywhere. We do Scrum in oil and gas, we do Scrum in retail, we do Scrum in marketing, we do Scrum in consulting. We do Scrum basically everywhere where you find this uncertainty. And you find that certainly everywhere because the environment is changing so fast now that you basically, the moment you finish planning, you have to start planning again because your assumptions have changed. So yeah, you can use it from IT to oil and gas.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's very applicable across industries and technology, not technology. Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the book that you're writing. So you've gotten all this expertise, seen Scrum in action and the effects that it has across both small and large organizations. So tell us a little bit about what led you to write this book and a little bit more about it.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, I wasn't really a fan of the idea of writing a book about Scrum because I thought, so there's the Scrum guide. As of now, it has 16 pages, so it's very lightweight. And it tells you everything you have to do Scrum. So I was thinking it doesn't make any sense to write a book about Scrum because what you need is there and everything you add just makes it more complex.
Sure.
But what we found in our experience here is, so it's easy for people to understand Scrum, and it's also, the Scrum Guide also tells you what you have to do, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And the problem for people is usually applying Scrum. So this is the hard part. And also we've seen here lots of different interpretations of the Scrum Guide. So in some sense, so Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland created Scrum, but in a certain sense, I think the further away someone is from Jeff Sutherland, for example, Jeff Sutherland trains somebody, that's trained somebody, that trains somebody, that trains somebody, then the message maybe gets watered down or even changed. So we see lots of, I would call it probably Franken Scrum, like interpretations of Scrum that are actually really bad. So I thought, well, let me try to use our experience to write a book on how to actually do that. So the book gives you some basics of why it should be the way it is, and it also gives you concrete hows on how to apply concrete practices.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that how piece is super important because you can tell people what to do and why they should do it as much as you want, but usually folks want a little bit more, and especially if I'm assuming there's probably some examples, I think, from the experience that you have to help highlight how exactly to use and implement. And those are the things that I know I personally respond to. So I completely understand why this book is so valuable.
Yeah, no, for sure. We have lots of case studies in there from our experience. So to show how it works and how it works also outside of technology. It was another part of the book. No, most people still see Scrum only in technology, but really now most of our clients are outside of technology.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, that if it's been successful in technology, why wouldn't it be successful in other industries, and how do you apply that? So it's a natural progression of an idea and framework that works really well. So can you share some of the maybe one or two stories from your experience of some really fun implementations or uses of the Scrum framework?
So maybe two. One is an oil and gas company, which is a not really natural environment initially for Scrum. So they had read Jeff Sutherland's book. They called us, the VP called us and said, well, that sounds all really interesting, but can we do that in oil and gas? And I actually said, well, I have no idea, but let's see what we can do. And so we analyzed the situation a little bit. We looked at where to start, and we looked for an environment with high uncertainty but relatively low cost of change. So in case we fail, it wouldn't be too expensive.
So I want to pause. Notice what Fabian says. He is honest with his client first and foremost, saying, I don't know if the Scrum methodology will work in oil and gas, but let's find out together. And then what they did is they found a project with high uncertainty that was a good fit for Scrum and had very low risk. So if it failed, it wouldn't be the end of the world for the company. And that's something that is very important as an entrepreneur to take away, is that you've got to find opportunities to test ideas, hypotheses that have little downside risk if they fail. Let's listen once again.
And I actually said, well, I have no idea, but let's see what we can do. And so we analyzed the situation a little bit. We looked at where to start, and we looked for Basically, we look for an environment with high uncertainty, but relatively low cost of change. So in case we fail, it wouldn't be too expensive. In oil and gas, everything is expensive now, so relatively, relatively low cost of change. So we did find that in the exploration phase for gas, we did that. And we basically get their drilling time. So drilling is the most expensive part there. And drilling a well can cost millions of dollars. So the drilling time is really essential. And we get their drilling time from average 19 days per well to 6 days per well.
Wow.
Which is an incredible result. And then another retail company here, there we had a team, and they are responsible for store openings. So they prepare everything for the store or for the shop for launch day, let's say. Their major metric is how many stores can they open in a quarter. So when we start analyzing them, they were opening 6 stores per quarter. The first quarter we worked with Scrum with them, they opened 27 stores. So another 450% or something improvement. And really we didn't change a lot, except we didn't change people. We changed just a little bit the way they work.
Interesting.
Give them focus, make them cross-functional, and that's it in 1 quarter.
That's incredible. Yeah, those are some pretty powerful results and really highlight, I guess, the impact that Scrum and the work that you're doing really has. So that's awesome.
Yeah, nice cases. They sell.
Exactly. So what was it like writing the book? Have you written a book before? Is this your first book?
Oh, no, it's my first book, first of all, and I wasn't expecting a workload that high on that. So I took a year or so, basically doing every day a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if I would do it again, but yeah, for now it's done.
There you go. That's awesome. And when does the book come out?
Okay, so it will be available for pre-sales the next few days. It's already registered. Just wait to show up on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, etc. And the really on sale date when you can pre-order it now, but to really buy it, it's the 15th of March.
Okay.
So the delivery you will get from the 15th of March onwards.
That's exciting.
So if you want more information, you can go to yourscrumplaybook.com. You can also register there to get information and the free ebook on the first Scrum steps, etc. And then you get all the information around the book.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that. What advice do you have for someone that maybe is interested in Scrum? And obviously read your book. I think that's the first place to start. But where should they start if they're looking to actually use this framework in their business or in a project that they've got internally?
Okay. So my opinion, it depends a little bit on in what context and environment you start. It's certainly a little different if you start in a 10,000 people company or on a startup. But I think you have to be very clear about what's your vision, your purpose for your product, what you want to develop.
Okay.
And then when you start with Scrum developing that, I think at the beginning it is really important that you stick to the basic rules. Like in Agile, we talk a lot about experiments and can change these and that. But at the beginning, I think it's very recommendable that you just stick to the rules. There's few rules. It's very lightweight, but stick to the rules and practice them and make them part of your DNA. And once you have mastered them, then you can start changing them. But if you start changing them from the beginning, it's like kind of trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Yeah, stick to the framework until you're comfortable and you understand it, and then that's when you can start to experiment a little bit. So,
right.
Cool. Perfect. So I want to transition us a little bit. So my co-founder and I co-founded a fintech company called Ostrich that's focused on personal finance and talking about the emotional side of money. And so I want to talk a little bit about that if you're comfortable. And
sure.
I'm really curious, especially since you said you're originally from Germany, lived in Australia, now in Colombia. So you've seen, experienced a lot of different cultures and living in different places, 3 different continents. So could you describe your relationship with money?
My relationship with money, that's a pretty good question. I think money itself is not the important thing, is what the money stands for. So what do you use that for, no? So at the end, it's probably just paper, and now since we have fiat currency, just paper. We hope that we don't lose trust in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. As an entrepreneur, owning your own company, what's that like in your relationship with finances as an entrepreneur?
Okay, so I have an MBA with focus on finance. So I was always very finance focused. So I try, for example, to do business plan, do net present value calculation. I even put Monte Carlo analysis in there to check different scenarios. But to be honest, I don't think that works. So
Okay.
everything of these forecasts is the formulas are easy. No, the problem are the assumptions you put into these forecasts, and these assumptions are usually wrong. Like you can get some that you get the trend right, but we've seen lots of entrepreneurs here, also around my friends, and I've never seen a business plan that worked out the way it was planned.
Exactly, right? That's also right why you switched to Scrum, because the old project management, putting everything in plan in place at the very beginning and not making any changes doesn't work.
Correct.
Perfect. So Fabian, when you think about the future, dreams, goals, targets, where do you see yourself, your business, this book? What are you aiming for?
Okay, so I think Scrum is just a solution to a problem. So I've been in Colombia for around 10 years now. Colombia obviously has certain problems here, and I believe that one important way to change the future of country is education. And I also believe that one of the major engines for an economy is the private sector. So if the private sector doesn't work, they don't pay taxes, so the government has no money. And also the private sector provides major jobs for people, and if there are no jobs, where people have no money. So what we're trying to do with Scrum here is like we're trying to teach, so that's the educational part, the private sector, how to be more effective, how to be more efficient, how to be more productive. And I believe that in the long term, this is something that helps the country. So that's what we try to achieve, using Scrum as a vehicle.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. So focuses on private sector. You're not taking any public sector clients right now. Is that right?
Yes, right now we do not take public clients.
Okay, cool. No, just curious. What advice do you have for others? Someone that wanted to follow in your footsteps. You've had a successful career within IT, project management, and then opening up your own company, and now spreading this methodology that you've had so much success with. What advice would you give to someone else that wanted to follow in your footsteps?
Okay, so I think there's not a lot of stuff I would recommend. First, I would say preparation always beats talent. So
okay,
if you know what you are doing, then just keep going. That don't rely on your talent or something. Like prepare, learn, study, go ahead. You need discipline to apply what you want to do, and I don't know how you say that, like resilience, or you have to keep going. Like it won't work out from the beginning. Just one thing is probably interesting. You should be able to pivot when you see it's not going in the direction you expected. So for example, when we started out, we didn't sell Scrum from the beginning. And the first steps of the company were actually implementing PMOs, which is really far away from Scrum. But by understanding what the client needs and what we can do to help actually the client, we changed at certain points, and I would recommend that. So keep going, work, understand the environment, learn fast, get fast feedback, and pivot when you have to.
Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. You've got to be resilient, but you've also got to understand the feedback that you're getting as you go. So pivot, adjust.
Correct.
Awesome. And then what is the best investment you've made?
The best investment I've made? Oh, that's a really good question. The best investment I've made. I think that's a really good question. I don't really know how to answer this. I believe in terms of money investment, I think there's time and money investment. Yeah. So I think in investing time was probably the company. In terms of money, I think was not so much buying assets or something like that, but investing in knowledge, let's say, and improving myself and improving our people. Like in the company, we always try to be well on top of the newest stuff, of that is good or not, but at least that we understand and know what to do and what not to do. So I think that's probably the best investment, because it pays off. Like what happened when we started out, our rates were low. Okay. Now we're the absolute experts in that topic in Colombia. So this investment is like a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times return on investment, because now we charge rates that are really, really high, even compared to the rest of the market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, investing. And I like how you broke that down. There's the time investment and then money investment. And yet at the same time, the money investment was still focused on knowledge and education. It wasn't an asset. So I like those responses a lot. It makes a lot of sense.
Great.
What would you say is the best and the worst part of entrepreneurship?
Okay, so the best part is that you are part of the creation process, and you can direct where the boat is going, right?
Yeah.
And you learn lots of stuff. You get to know lots of people. It's exciting. Well, the worst part's probably also the time, because if you do that, there will be lots of weekends and nights and holidays where you actually work, which always comes at the cost of something else, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's opportunity costs when you spending your time. What would you say is the dumbest money mistake you've made?
The dumbest money mistake was my investment in WorldCom.
Yeah.
But based on reading some newspaper article recommending to buy that stock, like without even checking what's going on. So
that goes back to your earlier answer, saying that planning is really important, right? I think that that planning and looking into it makes a little more, is important. So
correct.
That makes sense. Most frivolous way you've ever spent money?
Most frivolous way I've ever spent money, probably vacations. So I don't buy a lot of things, so I like to travel. That's usually where I will spend money. So sometimes I don't know, when I see a couple of free days and I can do something, and let's go there. That's probably where I spend my money.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if I consider that frivolous though, if it's a vacation and decompressing, but yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
but what I know, I can't think of anything where I spend thousands of dollars on maybe on new tech stuff. That's so.
Okay.
Like the new MacBook or the new iPhone and stuff like that, but not.
Yeah, I gotcha. That's good that you don't have an easy answer. And so this one's interesting, and I'll allow you to kind of take this however you want. So the question that I normally ask, because most of the guests that I've have on are, from the US. So I ask, what's the biggest challenge facing everyday Americans when it comes to finances? But I'll open that up, since you are German, have lived in Australia and are in Colombia. So maybe just either globally, or if you want to pick a place, what would you say is the biggest challenge just facing everyday people when it comes to money and finances?
Money and finance. So I can, as you said, I can't answer that for the US, but what I see here maybe is that people live on credit on everything. So
okay.
So it's kind of a return delay gratification problem, or inverted. So they don't have the money yet. They want something, they buy it on credit, and now they have to get the money to pay back with interest, right?
Yeah. And
you see that everywhere, like credit cards, easy credits everywhere. I don't know, like it might make sense sometimes, like if you don't have food and you need credit to buy food, well, I would understand that. Or maybe it's a house that is so big that you probably can pay that up front. Buying cars on credit and stuff, I don't know, TVs, that is ridiculous.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. Big credit problem. Perfect. Yeah. So Fabian, anything else you want to share about Scrum, the book, your journey with the audience?
Okay, well, maybe I think I understand that there are lots of entrepreneurs listening to your podcasts, maybe, or people in that sector.
Yes.
So I would love to encourage all of you to just keep going and maybe try Scrum as a framework to iterate fast, learn fast, and be hyper productive.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Great advice. Well, Fabian, thank you so much for joining. This was a lot of fun, and really, really glad we were able to connect and sit down and share a little bit more about your experience and knowledge when it comes to implementing Scrum.
Yeah, William, thanks a lot for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good luck. Excited for the book, and make sure to get it. You said March 15th?
March 15th, but if you want, then go to yourscrumplaybook.com and sign up, and you get a free ebook with some tips and also the newest info around the book.
Perfect. There you go. Love it. All right. Well, thanks so much, Fabian. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, you too, William.
All right. So that concludes my conversation with Fabian Schwartz. As you can tell, this book is going to be full of some great stories. I'm super excited to read it, and just a great conversation. What I really liked about Fabian is how he has been able to learn from his experiences within project management and having run huge, big projects that have failed, and then implementing this new Scrum Agile framework and seeing the results that he's had, and then bringing that to a wider audience. So really, really impressive, and super excited about the book. So hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Fabian Schwartz. As always, please share, subscribe. It means the world to me that you are a listener of the Silicon Alley podcast, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day and are enjoying the podcast. If so, please share, please subscribe. That's it for the Silicon Alley podcast. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, getostrich.com, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley podcast. Have a great one, guys.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place. Some words got you searching for the bright side over and over until you're looking on the inside. Yeah. One life, there's a feeling that you can't find, holding a hope and it'll only keep you on the outside.
Special thanks to Brett Miller for providing his song Million Voices as the theme music to this podcast. Special thanks to Carolina Gankars for help directing. And thank you for listening. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or future guests to appear on the Silicon Alley podcast, follow us on social media and shoot us a message at Silicon Alley Podcast on all the socials. Twitter, it's at Silicon Alley Pod. Thanks so much for listening. This is a Financial Glass production. New episodes every Friday.